Okay, we're going to get started. We've got a decent amount of information that we want to get through. So if anybody else, oops, sorry, hit a button there. So if anybody else joins in as we're going, no problem. We're going to get started. Sorry about the poll. If you guys saw a poll thing up there before, we were testing out, trying to get a little more familiar with Zoom. So we're testing out the polling feature. We will have a couple questions, a couple polls in there for you guys to answer, and but we'll pop those up when time comes. So just want to thank you guys for attending our webinar on NG911 GIS. My name is Bill Steele. I handle business development marketing for Cloudpoint. Aaron Strickler, one of our professional engineers at Cloudpoint, is going to walk us through how the NG911 system relies on correct GIS data, some various methods and workflows used to make sure that you guys are able to service your community to the best of your ability. Of course, we're working hard to continually bring you more content webinars, and so in the next couple of weeks, well, actually this week, we've got one on our sign inventory management system, Sign-Ops. That's on Thursday. Then later in July, we've got one newer webinar actually on Survey 123, and we'll have a couple more webinars on Survey 123 throughout the year. So keep your eyes open for that. And then in August, another reprisal on our Parcel Fabric and ArcGIS Pro. It's a very popular one. A lot of people need information and questions about Parcel Fabric. And then at the end of August, we've got a reprisal on our indoors mapping specialty. That's August 31st. So again, any of those you can sign up for cloudpointgeo.com/webinars. They should all be listed there. And of course, we do all our webinars in Zoom. So just to remind you guys, obviously your cameras and microphones are turned off. We will take questions, do question and answer at the end as time allows. So at any point in time, if you have a question that comes up, just hit the little button down at the bottom of your toolbar. Q&A should pop up. You can submit it there. And then, of course, we have the chat feature. If something comes up or if you can't hear us, the video goes out, anything like that, you can let us know and get a hold of us through there as well. So a lot of you guys are probably familiar with us, but just to fill you in, we work in a lot of sectors, public works, facilities, land records, even cemeteries, anything that's needed with GIS. And as a trusted Esri business partner, we help people drive intelligent decision-making using mapping technology. And of course, one of those services is preparing your GIS data for an NG911 system. So obviously not to be too heavy-handed, but this work can literally mean the difference between life and death. And some of these processes can take weeks or months to complete, and that has to be standardized, of course, for your statewide GIS platform. So some states have put deadlines in place, specifically Illinois. You can see here, August 31st coming up is the due date for the second draft of address points. And I think Aaron will go back over these, but second draft of address points and the first draft of road center lines. And then at the end of the year brings the third and second drafts due for those layers respectively. And it may be tedious work, but we are experts at fixing address points, correcting road center lines, lining up those boundaries, and those can be huge undertakings for local GIS staff. It's also trying to handle other data requests. So here at Cloudpoint, our team of GIS professionals, we're able to take all your data, audit it, give you a report on the health of your data, convert it to your state's data schema, continue ongoing cleanup of your data for your state standards, and then even manage your GIS data for your PSAT moving forward. And so here to tell us more about how all that works is Aaron. Aaron, take it away.
Thank you, Bill. Let's get my screen shared here. All right, so I have a lot to cover. I'm going to jump right in, but as I do, Bill, if you could put that first poll up. I kind of want to know where everyone is from, because our states can vary based on the standards can vary based on the state that you're in. So while those answers are rolling in, we've done a variety of projects ranging from data creation through data maintenance for multiple PSAPs in both Iowa and Illinois. Throughout the course of those projects, we've seen sort of 4 stages of this GIS portion of the 911 conversion process kind of come to the surface. And stages is in quotes here because they're not official stages. There's some overlap in these, and depending on your state or what shape your data is in, you may be able to skip some of these stages. But generally, a PSAP will find itself in one of these stages. So you're either creating data, preparing the data for your state schema, cleaning it up to make it more accurate, or at the end, then we move into our maintenance phase. So Bill, can you tell me where everybody is from?
Oh, be good to unmute myself. Yeah, it looks like split between Illinois and Wisconsin.
All right.
Mostly Illinois, but we've got a couple people here from Wisconsin as well.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody, and thanks for sharing that. The examples and the requirements that I will talk about today are from Illinois because we're in the middle of this process. And just know that other states, Wisconsin included in that, will vary a little bit, not a lot. All of our data, all of our standards are based on NENA standards because the end goal eventually is to have a nationwide system. So some of the nuances will be a little bit different, some of the terminology will be, but as a whole, most of this will apply to any state that's in this process. So on this map, you can see that Illinois, we are implementing at a sub-state level. Wisconsin, this map is kind of old. It shows you that your planning has started, but really I think you're more in that bright red. You're doing preparation at the state level, getting your standards put together. So let's talk about that first step in creating data. This is one of those steps that you might be able to skip altogether. If you're already using GIS data in your CAD system, or if you have it in other systems in the county, maybe address points or road center lines, maybe creation is not where you would start. You might have to start with the preparation step, but let's say you don't have those. So there are three categories of layers: required layers, strongly recommended, and recommended. Illinois provided a geodatabase, a PDF document with these laid out, and also a template that contains these, a geodatabase template that contains these in data sets. So that's what we're going to see here is a screenshot from Pro of the data sets. The required is obviously what's absolutely required to get the system up and running. So these are the first priority. This is what I'm going to talk about throughout the rest of the webinar. But I did want to mention the rest. So in the required, we've got the address points, your emergency service boundaries, and in Illinois, they can be all in one layer combined, or you can break those out into EMS, fire, and law. You've got provisioning boundary, which is the area for which you are responsible for the GIS data. PSAT boundary is the area for which you are responsible for the calls. Required topology is a set of geometry rules to make sure that your data is in good shape and won't cause problems when we go live with these systems. And then road center lines. So the strongly recommended are those layers that will enhance the NG911 system. They're not required for it to work, but these are where, after you got the required layers, this is where I would put my effort. And some of these you probably already have incorporated municipalities, parcels. Obviously, we can find states and counties. And then the ones down here at the bottom are tables that will help, again, once the system is live. And then the last batch is recommended. And those are things to think about including if you already have them. They'd be great to have as a statewide layer, but for now, those would be really on the back burner as we're getting things up and going. So where would you start creating this data? Obviously, I talked about CAD data. That would be the best place to start. If you can export a shapefile from those systems, that's the way to go. But if not, your PSAT provisioning boundaries, you can start with a county boundary. Your emergency service boundaries, if you have parcel data that's got tax information or maps from those local agencies. Excuse me. The road center lines, your Department of Transportation probably maintains a center line layer. Maybe your county highway department would also have those. And then address points. This is really the hard one to create from scratch. So we are finishing up a project now for a PSAP where we started with parcels. We created points at the centroids of those parcels. And then we used voter lists and utility lists from the municipalities to make sure we had captured all of those addresses. So what's next? We've got the data, we've collected it from CAD, or we've created it from scratch, and now it has to be put into the required schema or format. So Bill, if you don't mind putting up that second poll, I'd like to know from our audience how many layers you have already got in your state's required format.
Yep.
Thank you.
Here. All right, guys, that one should be up there. And this is multiple choice. You can pick as many as are applicable.
So while you guys are filling that out, we have a service we provide that's called a data audit. And this, getting the data into the correct schema, is the first step that we take in this audit. After we get the required layers from you, and the goal of our audit is to provide a PSAP with three things. First, your data in the correct schema. So you give us, say, your CAD data, we give it back to you in the state schema. Second, a list of the attributes that you're missing. And third, a list of the data or attribute errors. And I will show examples of those as we continue, but that's sort of the overall data audit process. So Bill, what do we have?
Yeah, looks like, what layers are operation? So looks like quite a few people have law boundaries, fire boundaries. Not so many, 75% said EMS boundaries. Road center lines looks like 100% there, and address points at 75%. So no bad answers, none of the above.
No, yeah, you guys are ahead of the curve from what I have seen. So that is good. So I will probably kind of blow through this because you guys have probably already done this for your layers, but what we have found is for the best method for converting this data into the required schema is to merge your empty state feature class with your, let's say in this instance, it's a CAD shapefile, and merge those into one. And now you've got all those fields together in one feature class. And the next step then is to field calculate any of that data from your CAD data into the state feature class. Some of that will require some work in that my CAD file has abbreviations for the direction and the suffix, and I need in the state feature class, I need those to be spelled out. So there are some scripts you can use, some arcade expressions that really help out with that. And again, since you guys have done most of this, I'm going to skip the demo that I was going to do for this, and we can spend more time on the next phases. So you've got it all in your state schema, and then there's holes, right? So in that table, I converted what I could from our CAD data to the state data, but then there were some fields that were empty. So do I have to go populate all those fields? And thankfully, the answer is no. We have categorized the fields just like we have categorized layers. So there are mandatory, conditional, optional, and reserved fields. So when we look at your data, we give you a report then of the holes that are in that data. So these red would represent fields that are mandatory, but we didn't find any data. But some of them are as simple as with data update, you will use editor tracking to populate those. So we'll give you recommendations on how to populate those. If we did find some information, we'll tell you, hey, here's where they are. Here's where we found it. And then here's the amount of time we think it will take to populate those fields. So if you get this report back and there's too much for you to do, then right away you'll have a cost for, hey, this is what it'll take to get this populated. This would also be good to use internally just to keep track of which fields you still need to work on. So the next question to ask yourself is, how accurate is my data? So at this point, if it's in the state schema, you can upload it to the state. But we all know that that is not the end. It has to be accurate. So then we look at updating our data. One tool that we use is ArcGIS Pro's Data Reviewer. We also use some scripts that we have written to pull some of these errors out. And the things we're looking for are both geometry and attribute errors. So examples of geometry errors would be, is the road center line drawn from low address to high address? Are they all broken and snapped at the intersections? You know, we're going to look for topology. Are there any gaps or overlaps in your boundaries? Because in an NG911 system, those could be disastrous. If a call comes in from a cell phone and it lands in a spot where you happen to have a gap, then the system won't know where to send that call. So in this type of system, these are really important things to have cleaned up. As far as attribute goes, you can do, well, we're looking for, is the road center line from value greater than the to value? That would be a problem that we'd want to at least look into. And then do we have overlapping address ranges, or does the address range, does the address point value, the address number there, does it fall outside of the road center line range? So there's a whole bunch of things we can look for, but what I want to show you next is how we utilize Data Reviewer to do that. So I'm going to drag Pro up on my screen. Data Reviewer is also available in ArcMap and actually works a little bit, it's more comprehensive in ArcMap, but we're trying to migrate all to Pro, and so I'm going to show you how to use that here. It is a webinar all on its own to show you how to get it set up. There's information on the internet, and if you have questions about that, I'd be happy to point you to those or answer those questions, but I just don't have time today to show you how to get that set up. But what I do have is a very small sample set of data, and I want to show you how we can use those rules to find those errors in our data. So I'm going to show you the couple rules that I already have created. So here's an attribute query rule. So what I'm doing here is looking for places where the left from address is greater than the left to address, because that's something, again, we'd want to look into. I'm also looking at my address point domains to see if all the values in those fields that have domains are populated correctly with the domain. But what I'm going to do is add another one so you can see how easy it is to add. So I'm going to click Query Attributes, and then I'm going to tell it which feature classes I want to use for this. So I'm going to do road centerline, and then I need to add my goal. So I'm just going to write an expression here, and I'm going to say, so I'm going to look at the right side now and say my right from address is greater than, I'm going to pick fields and say my right to address. And so that really is just performing a query, and it's going to call those errors. I'm going to hit apply there. You can add some notes and a title. You can customize, the severity if you want to rank them from 1 to 5 in the order of severity. So now I have got those 3, and what I want to do is go back to my map. And in the Manage Quality tab, I have this Run Reviewer rule. So I'm just going to click that button, and it is going to compare my data to those rules that I just ran. And if I zoom out a little bit, I can see where my offenders are. And I will be able to flip through those. So I can, if I double click on here, it has highlighted that road. And what's wrong with that road is that my left from is greater than my left to. So that really just pulls out those errors for me so that I don't have to look at them. I don't have to do queries individually for each of these errors. I can create a set of error checks and run them all at once. There, also the way you can use Data Reviewer is to say, let's say I fixed that, and I can update my results and say that I resolved it, and then it will turn green so that I know I have updated that. The advantage of ArcMap is you can have a batch review job. So you can save a list of error checks and then run the whole batch job on your data. You can use the batch jobs in Pro, but you cannot edit them. So it's one of the few things I still go back to ArcMap for. Okay, so let's get that back out of the way. So what we utilize that for then is to provide clients with a list of, here are the errors. So we'll provide a table for each of those required layers with a list of, you had 118 roads where the left value is greater than the right value. We will estimate what the cost would be to that, again, and give you a feature class so you can see these individually. That way you have options. You can fix some of them or have someone else fix them all for you. The hardest part of this whole process, like Bill alluded to, is doing the cleanup work. So there's a lot of manual cleanup work, but we have found some tricks that make it faster, and we really do enjoy improving this type of data. So we're done, right? I know you all know the answer is no. You are currently already keeping your data up to date. So you're going to continue that into the future. But there are a few things to know about this stage in the 911 conversion. So there are state required maintenance personnel. I know this is true of Illinois. I'm not sure yet about Wisconsin, but each PSEP is required to signify a local data steward as well as a data maintainer. The data steward must be an employee of the PSEP, but the data maintainer can be a third-party provider. In fact, we're serving as data maintainer for a couple of PSEPs in the state already. And a couple of things to think about when you're deciding which route to go. Eventually, there will be a required turnaround time for updates and corrections. I believe that's going to be 3 days. I tried to look for it again today and I couldn't find it. But someone has to be right on top of these changes. And also, during what I have been referring to as the messy middle, when these CAD systems are using different systems from the state, and in some cases we have different spatial reference systems, then you've got to maintain your data for use in 2 different systems. And so that takes some planning and a little bit of extra work. So as far as that goes, remember that table where we combined the 2, we merged and we field calculated? That can be very useful in this phase. So what we have found works well for us, at least, is to have one data set, and it's in the state schema and in the state spatial reference system. So it's in WGS 84. But we also maintain these CAD fields that may not correlate to anything in the state's fields. So, but what we don't have to do is maintain them manually at the same time. So I want to show you Pro again and show you how we use attribute rules to help save some time on that end. So these are much easier to set up than Data Reviewer. If you just right-click on your feature class, you can go to Design and Attribute Rules. It's been hard for me to say today. So I have 10 rules here, and what these do is help me not have to duplicate my work. So actually, I want to go back to my data. I'm going to open my address points attribute table. And I'm going to open my attributes over here. So let's say I got an update request and I need to change this. This street name is not road, it should be street. So I can use the domain and I can say street. And what you'll notice is down here, I have the there it is, the post type abbreviation. So it is already changed. So let's go back to, let me cancel that. So I've got road, and I have the road abbreviation. So because those attributes are set to change, I do not have an abbreviation for all of these. There are a terrible amount of these suffixes, but for the common ones that we use. So I changed street there, and then down here you'll notice that changed street. It will also trigger a change to my full road name. I have a full road name with a city code. So while I have two sets of fields in here, I'm really only maintaining them one at a time. I also have the latitude and longitude calculate automatically. So if I move that point, that's going to update. So the other types of attribute rules that I have in here, I just want to show you how powerful they are and how quickly they work. So the abbreviations, when I change north to south, it's going to change my N to an S. The city code I have, when I change the city, an MSAG value, then it'll change in the OSSI fields. And then these are just set again by an expression. They are arcade expressions. I wanted to point out the abbreviation. That's you. So this is just a big if-then statement. If my post type is avenue, then return the abbreviation that I need for avenue. If you guys have any questions or want a copy of those, I built those all from other people who had started them on the internet, so I would be happy to share those with you. All right, let's get moving. I see we're getting close to time. So we use attribute rules, and I also use model builder. So when I when I need a new export for my CAD system, I can take just these fields and I can export them into the right spatial reference system. And I do that with a model. So I did that once. It took a little bit of tweaking, but now I just have a tool that I can say, hey, export my road center lines, and it spits out a shape file in the right spatial reference system. And it has saved a lot of time. I wish I had time to talk about that, but if you guys have questions, again, this would be a whole nother webinar. I'd be happy to answer them, or if we have enough interest, we could do a webinar for those. As far as the turnaround, the quick turnaround, we've created an application that would allow PSAPs to communicate needed updates either internally, so a call taker could use this to find to show where a problem was, or maybe your municipalities use this to say, hey, I have a new address. So there's a place for them to log in and show those changes. The manager can update, move them through the system, assign them to people, and then there's a dashboard that will show where all those errors are in process. So with that, I think since we're out of time, Bill, did we have any questions?
None right at the moment, but guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and throw those in the Q&A box. I'm going to share over your screen, Aaron, just to get our contact info in there. If we need to switch back, we can do that. But so yeah, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and throw those in there. We'll try to answer a couple. But otherwise, for more information, of course, you can go to cloudpointgeo.com/ng911. I've got my email, my phone number here at the office up there. Of course, we're all over social media, so you can find us there, like, share, subscribe. And again, to get a hold of us directly, whether myself or Aaron, for any more questions, or if your organization needs help with your GIS data for 911. But again, thank you guys so much for attending. We hope you got something out of this, and keep your eyes open. We'll probably, like Aaron said, we'll probably try a reprisal of this webinar, maybe make some tweaks, or again, we might kind of switch up and go over some other things that we weren't able to get to today. So keep your eyes open for that. Thanks, but otherwise, yeah, thanks a lot for attending, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.